If you've been following the royal family headlines lately, it honestly feels a bit like walking into a room where everyone's just shouting at once.
Oh, absolutely.
It's chaotic. You've got the health updates coming out of Buckingham Palace, the sort of constant low-level anxiety about succession planning, and then just the usual tabloid noise.
The feuds, the drama.
Right, exactly. The atmosphere has been incredibly heavy. It's a very high-stress environment right now.
Heavy is definitely the perfect word for it. It feels like the whole institution is holding its breath. There's a fragility there that we really haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, and usually when things are this tense, the palace tries to distract us with something loud, a big parade, a balcony appearance, something shiny to look at.
A classic misdirection.
Exactly. But this time, right in the middle of all that panic, King Charles did something completely different. He dropped a major announcement, but he did it so quietly that if you blinked, you probably missed it.
It's the classic actions speak louder than words move.
Hmm.
But in this specific case, the silence actually was the action.
Right. So today we are talking about the recent news regarding Sir Timothy Laurence. And for anyone who just casually watches the royals, that name might just conjure up an image of the tall, quiet guy standing 3 steps behind Princess Anne.
The guy holding the umbrella.
Exactly. But looking at the sources we have today for this deep dive, this isn't just a housekeeping update. Historians and courtiers are calling this a literal shock to the system.
It really is a shock.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because it's a strategic pivot.
Yeah.
We are seeing King Charles use a very specific honor to signal a massive shift in what the monarchy actually values right now.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this. We're going to decode why this specific honor, given to this specific man at this specific time, signals a move from loud devotion to quiet endurance.
It is a complete reevaluation of royal currency.
Right. So the headline here is that King Charles has quietly awarded Sir Timothy the Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order.
Which is quite the mouthful.
It is an incredible alphabet soup of a title. And we will unpack what that GCVO acronym actually means in a minute. But first, we really have to look at the man himself.
We do.
Because, frankly, reading through these profiles in the source material, Sir Tim is arguably the most successful royal spouse in modern history. And he's successful precisely because nobody talks about him.
That's the irony of it, isn't it? We live in an era defined by celebrity royals. And his success is built entirely on being the anti-celebrity.
I want to dig into his background a bit because the notes here highlight something I really hadn't fully appreciated before. He didn't just wander into the palace one day.
No, not at all.
He was an insider way before he was ever a husband. He was a Royal Navy officer commanding ships, but he was also an equerry to Queen Elizabeth II.
Right, and we really shouldn't gloss over what being an equerry actually entails.
It sounds like just opening doors.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's not just a ceremonial role where you stand around in a nice uniform. You are effectively a high-level personal assistant, a bodyguard, and a logistics manager all rolled into one. You see the monarch in their most unguarded moments. You know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking, of course.
So he essentially sees the machinery of the monarchy from the engine room before he ever actually joins the family.
Exactly. He commanded the HMS Boxer. He commanded the HMS Montrose. These are serious, high-stakes roles.
Yeah.
He comes from a world where the chain of command is absolute. You don't freelance in the Navy. If you freelance, people get hurt. And he brought that exact mentality right into his marriage.
I'm talking about the marriage. This was in 1992. I was looking at the timeline in our research, and 1992 was, well, the Queen famously called it her annus horribilis.
A terrible year.
The Wales marriage was completely imploding in public. The Yorks were in trouble. Windsor Castle literally caught fire. And right in the middle of this absolute maelstrom, Anne marries Tim.
And just notice the contrast there. The other royal marriages were dominating the front pages with scandal and leaks and drama. But Tim and Anne, they just quietly got on with it. They had a small ceremony in Scotland. And here is the crucial data point from the sources that really stands out to me.
The title.
The title, or rather, the complete lack of one.
This blew my mind when I read it. When he married Anne, he didn't become a peer. He didn't become the Earl of somewhere or other.
No.
And the sources are very clear that this wasn't some sort of snub by the Queen. It was a choice. He declined a peerage.
Which is a massive statement of intent. Just think about the ego usually required to marry the Queen's only daughter.
Right.
And to say, no thanks, I don't need a fancy title to validate my position here. It signals right from day one that he wasn't there to compete.
Because in royal circles, everything is hierarchy.
Everything. Who bows to whom? Who walks 3 paces in front of whom? By rejecting the title, he essentially just stepped completely out of that game.
He accepted a life of restraint. I love that description in the profile we reviewed. He's always there, usually carrying the bags or driving the car, but he's never actually trying to catch the camera's eye.
He stays out of the shot.
It's almost an art form staying just outside the frame.
It is an art form.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly rare. I mean, most people who marry into that family, and we definitely don't need to name names here, the history books are full of them, they really struggle with the fact that they lose their own identity.
Yeah, they want to be seen.
They try to carve out a spotlight for themselves. So Tim did the exact opposite. He defined his identity entirely by his utility to the institution, not his visibility.
He's sort of the backbone's backbone. We know from the data that Princess Anne is the hardest working royal. She does something like 400 engagements a year.
That's a staggering number.
But Tim is the operational partner making all of that actually possible.
And that partnership is highly functional. That's the specific word the sources keep returning to. Functional.
It's not a fairy tale romance novel.
It's a logistics operation. Look at when Anne had her riding accident recently and couldn't appear at her scheduled events. Who stepped up? Tim.
And he didn't make a big fuss about it.
He didn't make a grand speech. He just went to the engagement, shook the necessary hands, delivered the message, and went home.
Which brings us to this award, the Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, the GCVO. Now, I did a little digging into the orders of chivalry for this deep dive because I really wanted to understand if this was just a thanks for coming participation trophy.
And it is definitely not that.
No.
It really isn't.
It is the absolute ceiling. It is the peak.
So help us rank this for the listener.
Yeah.
Because you've got your OBEs and MBEs that celebrities get. You've got the political knighthoods. Where exactly does the GCVO sit in that ecosystem?
So the critical distinction, and this is exactly what makes Charles's move so strategic and interesting, is that most honors are recommended by the government.
Okay.
The Prime Minister's office has a list, there's political lobbying, there are committees. But the Royal Victorian Order, which was established by Queen Victoria back in 1896, is the personal gift of the sovereign.
So there's no committee involved at all? No committee, no vetting by Downing Street, none of that. This is literally King Charles sitting at his desk, taking out his pen and saying, I am granting this to you personally.
Wow.
It is the highest sign of personal favor the monarch can possibly give, and the Grand Cross is the absolute highest rank within that specific order.
Looking at the list of past recipients in our notes, it is a very, very exclusive club. We're talking about fellow sovereigns, heirs to the throne, or private secretaries who have served for 30 years. It's usually reserved for people who are effectively blood royal or the absolute highest tier of palace staff.
Precisely. And Sir Timothy is neither of those things. He is a spouse. He is not in the line of succession at all.
Right.
So by giving him the GCVO, Charles is elevating him to the exact same honor bracket as his own siblings and his heirs. He's effectively saying this man is in the absolute inner circle of trust.
That's the key phrase right there, the inner circle of trust. Because if we look at the timing of this announcement, and the source notes emphasize this heavily, Charles isn't just handing out medals for fun right now.
No, the monarchy is under immense pressure.
Exactly. The why now of it all seems really important here.
The timing is everything. We are in a moment right now where the monarchy feels very thin. You have the king's own health battles, the Princess of Wales's recovery.
The bench is incredibly short.
Very short. So by elevating Tim right at this specific moment, Charles is sending a very clear message to both the public and to the rest of the royal family.
And according to the analysis, that message is service doesn't need applause to have value.
Yes, it is a complete validation of the quiet endurance model.
Sure.
Charles is signaling that he doesn't need more stars on the roster. He doesn't need more charisma.
He needs workers.
He needs people who show up, do the job without complaint, keep their mouths shut, and go home.
It feels like a very direct response to the last 5 or 10 years of royal drama, doesn't it?
Without a doubt.
Because we've had this sort of royal rock star era recently, with Harry and Meghan, and even going way back to Diana, the entire focus of the institution seemed to shift toward personality, relatability, emotional connection.
The celebrity aspect.
Yeah. And this feels like Charles slamming the brakes on that and saying, no, we are going back to basics.
It's a massive pivot from performance to presence. I mean, just think about it. Sir Timothy has never given a tell-all interview, ever.
Never.
He's never briefed the press against a family member. He's never leaked a strategic story to make himself look good in 30 years in this specific family.
It really is almost statistically impossible.
It truly is. In a famously leaky ship, he is the one completely watertight compartment.
And Charles is rewarding that loyalty. He's saying that in the long run, absolute reliability is worth far more than popularity.
It's a very traditional view of royalty, almost retro.
But it's exactly what the institution needs to survive right now.
It is the stabilizing force.
I want to go back to the functional partner aspect you mentioned earlier, because the source material mentions some very specific examples of how Tim operates that I think are really telling for you listening at home.
Like the driving.
Yes, the driving. He literally drives Princess Anne to engagements in their Bentley. There is no chauffeur. It's just Tim at the wheel.
It's such a great image, isn't it? Just the two of them navigating traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But it really speaks to the intimacy and the sheer efficiency of their operation.
Yeah.
They treat their royal duties almost exactly like a military campaign. The primary objective is to cover as much ground as possible with as little friction as possible.
There's also the mention in the sources of the diplomatic heavy lifting he does. We always see the glitzy state dinners on the news, but the notes talk about the grueling diplomatic tours to places that aren't necessarily glamorous at all.
And Tim is there for every single one of them.
Always.
He acts as a crucial sounding board. You have to remember, Anne is dealing with highly complex issues. She works with Save the Children, the International Olympic Committee.
Big global organizations.
Right. So having a spouse who is a high-ranking naval officer means she has an intellectual peer she can actually talk to. He's not just a silent prop in the background. He's a counselor.
But the key is that he keeps that counsel completely private.
Exactly. That Navy discipline really is the through line for his entire life.
Because in the Navy, if you do your job perfectly, nothing happens.
That's the goal. No collisions, no international crises. You only get noticed in that world when things go wrong.
That is the perfect analogy for his royal career. His overarching goal is for nothing to happen. No scandals, no front-page headlines.
And for over 3 decades, he has succeeded at that.
So the GCVO is really Charles acknowledging that nothing happening is actually a massive, active achievement that requires constant, daily effort.
It takes immense discipline to achieve that kind of silence.
So let's talk about how the world actually reacted to this, because usually a story about a quiet, older man getting a palace medal would be completely buried on page 15 of the newspaper.
If it was printed at all.
Right. But according to our social media analysis of the sources, the royal watchers, the hardcore fans online, they absolutely ate this up.
They really did. I think there is a very real fatigue out there in the public regarding the royal soap opera.
People are just exhausted by the leaks and the emotional confessions.
Exactly. So when they saw this award drop, the sentiment on places like Twitter and Reddit was overwhelmingly just finally.
Finally. Yeah, one comment that kept popping up in the threads we reviewed was substance over spectacle.
That sums it up perfectly.
People were saying, finally, someone behind the scenes is getting actual recognition.
It's a bit like when the bass player in a band finally gets a shout out during a concert. You suddenly realize, oh wait, the entire song falls apart without that guy keeping the rhythm.
That's a great way to put it.
The public is much smarter than the tabloids give them credit for. They can actually see who is doing the heavy lifting. They respect the hustle, especially when it's entirely unglamorous.
It's interesting that you say the public respects the unglamorous work, because I think for a very long time, the palace assumed we all just wanted the glamour.
They thought we demanded the fairy tale.
Right, the tiaras and the drama. But maybe now, in 2026, we actually just want competence.
I think that's exactly what it is. Look, we live in a highly chaotic world right now. Politics is chaotic. The economy is completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
So people look to the head of state for some semblance of stability. Sir Timothy represents absolute, unwavering stability. Rewarding him makes the whole institution look more solid.
Which brings us to the bigger strategic question that this deep dive is really all about. If this medal is a decoder ring for King Charles's reign, what does it actually tell us about the future of the monarchy?
It tells us the rules have changed.
Because if the path to the inner circle is now simply shut up and work, that completely changes the incentives for the next generation.
It absolutely recalibrates the emotional hierarchy of the family. If you are a younger royal right now or someone who might marry into the family in the future, the template for success has fundamentally changed.
The path to success isn't getting on the cover of Vogue anymore.
No, the path to success is the Sir Timothy model.
Don't try to be famous. Try to be useful.
Exactly. And that is a very hard pivot for an institution that, for the last 40 years, has relied almost entirely on star power to stay relevant.
It's true.
Charles seems to be making a massive bet that the future lies in boring, reliable service. He's betting on the royal servant model over the royal celebrity model.
It's a pretty risky bet in a TikTok-driven world, isn't it? I mean, can a boring monarchy actually survive the modern attention economy?
That is the million-dollar question. But just look at the alternative. The exciting version of the monarchy nearly tore the entire institution apart over the last decade.
It really did.
The boring version, the one exemplified by Anne and Tim, is quite literally the only part of the family that is currently functioning at 100% efficiency. So Charles is just doubling down on what actually works.
It's funny, as we talk about this, I keep thinking about how this applies outside the palace gates, because it's a lesson for any organization, really. We always tend to reward the loudest voice in the room or the person with the flashiest sales pitch.
We absolutely do. Human nature has a massive bias towards charisma.
But every company, every family, every sports team has a Sir Timothy. You know, the person who actually knows where the files are kept, who anticipates the problems before they even happen, who quietly diffuses the tension in a meeting.
The glue holding it together.
Exactly. And usually they get completely ignored when bonus season comes around.
Until they finally leave, and then the entire operation collapses.
Right. And Charles is making sure Tim knows he is deeply valued before anything collapses. It's a staff retention strategy just as much as it is an award.
It is, and it's a giant flashing signal to everyone else in the family. Be more like Tim.
I really do wonder how that specific message lands with the rest of the high-visibility Windsors, but that is probably a completely different deep dive for another day.
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole other conversation.
Well, before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over. We so often talk about legacy as this big, loud, statues, sweeping laws, famous speeches.
The things that make the history books.
Right. But Sir Timothy Laurence shows us a totally different kind of legacy, a legacy of deliberate silence. In a world that just won't stop screaming for attention, there is an incredible amount of power in simply holding the line and doing the work.
And being the one person the king trusts when the doors are firmly closed.
Exactly. So next time you're looking at your own team at work, or even your own family dynamic at home, take a second to look for the quiet ones. Look for the Sir Timothys in your life, because they might just be the ones running the whole show.
They usually are.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's been a fascinating look at how one simple, quiet medal can tell the entire story of a new reign. We will see you on the next one.
Take care.